In democracy, of course, there's the majority rule. Even if one side is 51 and the other says 49, it tears the society apart. And as time goes by, maybe they grow more polarized.
Right.
They distrust each other. They hate each other. That's the problem of democracy today.
What do you think about AI? Do you think singularity is near?
Many people in Silicon Valley think of AI as taking off. Then it leaves humanity with just two choices. Utopia, so you need to accelerate.
Yeah.
Dystopia, so you must stop. So it's like a car with just a pedal or the brake. Plurality is that steering wheel.
フューチャーカード始まります。今日のテーマはデジタル民主主義で、もう本当にこのテーマに一番ふさわしい方、台湾の元デジタル大臣のオードリー・タンさんに来ていただいてます。最近オードリーさんはこんなプルラリティという本を出してまして、グレン・ワイルさんという気鋭の経済学者と本を出してるんですね。プルラリティ、ちょっと難しい言葉なんですが、複数っていう意味なんですよね。複数っていうことはいろんな人が世の中にいると。で、いろんな人がそれぞれ違いがあるんですけれど、違いを持ってる者同士でコラボしていこうっていう本なんですね。で、これだけを聞くと、それってもうやってるじゃんとか民主主義じゃんって思う人もいるかもしれませんが、実は民主主義って全然ワークしてなくて、例えば選挙とかあるんですけど、どうしても多数派の意見が重視されて少数派の意見が忘れ去られるとか、あるいは日本は特にそうなんですが、いろんなすり合わせをしているうちに意見は1個にまとまるんですけど、なんか1つの意見になっちゃって、いつの間にか少数意見が忘れられてるみたいな、それを乗り越えていこう、プルーラルである、複数であるということをきちんと捉えてテクノロジーで乗り越えていこうという本です。それを実際このオードリー・タンさんに聞いていきたいと思います。So Audrey Tang, welcome to our show.
Very happy to be here.
I just explained plurality in 10 seconds.
Wow, that's great. We don't need the rest of the 50 minutes.
No, but I need to ask you if I'm correct.
Okay, you're correct.
So this is a book, very thick book, and we have a lot of questions to ask you. Digital democracy, new consensus, and of course about Japan. So first of all, so I just explained plurality to the audience, but it's a very difficult concept. Could you elaborate on that? Could you explain to our audience what plurality is?
Oh, it's actually very easy. It says in our society, there are many differences.
Yes.
And technology can help us see our differences. For example, in Taiwan, there are people who believe that same-sex people should wed as couples. And also some people think family relationship, very important, should honor the tradition and not introduce new kinship relationships. Very different. And then the technology can also help us to see the bridge. For example, both sides care about stable relationship. That's what they both care about. So the common values, the uncommon ground can be discovered also with technology. And so together, they can form the rough consensus, the things that we can all live with. And so the society can steer incoming issues such as same-sex marriage into what everybody can live with.
So difference becomes power, and we can collaborate with people who we don't agree with. I get the point, but it's not democracy. Don't we already have that?
Well, in many democracies, if it's put to vote, then maybe 51% of people win a referendum,
Right.
or they elect a president, and then they make some policy reality. But the other 49%, very unhappy. So 4 years down the road, they vote in another president or another mayor, cancel everything, and then do the different things, but for another 4 years. And then they get canceled again. A lot of flip and flop. So in democracy, of course, there's the majority rule, where people over 51% can determine the direction of the society. It does not mean that the other 49% think it's legitimate. And as time goes by, maybe they grow more polarized.
Right.
They distrust each other. They hate each other. There's a lot of indifference, like lack of curiosity between the two camps. That's the problem of democracy today.
I think this is a real great point about digital democracy, and I'd like to deepen our discussion. So you made a good point. How we can celebrate the opinion of the 49%. Can technology help us?
Yeah, definitely. When we first introduced this methodology in Taiwan, using the technology called Polis. It's open source. And in the beginning, we used it to resolve the case about Uber in 2015. Again, there's people who say Uber is the future, sharing economy, very efficient. There's people who say taxi union associations, the dignity is being degraded and it's extractive, it's gig economy. And if they keep shouting at one another, like on some social media, they will hate each other more and more, and there will be no resolution. Even if one side is 51 and the other says 49, it tears the society apart. However, the police system is different. Instead of the reply button, you only get I agree and I disagree. So upvote and downvote. So you can see one fellow citizen's sentiment, like I feel insurance is very important. And you can say, oh, I agree with that, or I don't. And as you do so, your avatar moves. After you vote a few times, your avatar moves toward a group. Maybe there's 3 groups. One thinks taxi should be protected. One thinks innovation is good. And another thinks the rural places need more coverage. They don't agree on most things. But then we also say, in the 3 weeks of discussion, anybody can come up with idea that bridge between those sentiments. The longer the distance the bridge crosses, the more bonus it gives. So instead of like in social media, where the extreme voices gets viral, here, the bridge gets viral. So a different algorithm, pro-social media, not anti-social media. At the end of the 3 week, we get a set of ideas, 9 ideas, very concrete policy that all different groups agree on. And so we make them law. And so Uber is not a problem in Taiwan. It's just another taxi fleet.
Interesting.
But then taxi can enjoy surge pricing, and the rural co-op and association can also form their virtual dispatch.
Because Uber is still a problem in Japan. We don't have Uber yet. So it's a very interesting example. So Taiwan overcame that differences.
That's right. And so we did it very quickly. Yeah, the point here is not that we put it to a referendum, because referendum only ask our individual opinions, and individuals can also be on the extreme. What it does is that it put people in groups, like groups of small clusters. And then we can check with each other's feelings. And people innovate to take the bridging positions that take care of other people's feelings. And so when we coalesce on a set of policies, because we all know the other people also can live with it, it's legitimate.
So let's talk about the 49% again, because in theory, a lot of political scientists have argued that the minority is the important. And if there's an election, the 51% wins, and they become the prime minister or the ruling party, and they say, in theory, that 49% is important. But so, do you mean that we knew that problem, or we knew that minority or diverse opinions are important, but we didn't have the technology?
Exactly. If all you have is a single ballot, like a referendum, where you can only say this or that, then there's no way to get a high resolution group selfie. So the society think it's polarized, but it's actually not. If you have higher resolution, like police, where people can type their own ideas and reflect on each other's ideas, then each person can put an idea on a ballot. So with thousands of people, that's thousands of ideas. The problem becoming, if you have thousands of ideas, how do you summarize that? It's very difficult.
Right.
A human cannot read through all the thousands of comments, so we need AI. So we've used AI to not just do clustering, but also to do the summarization. And starting this year, the AI doesn't hallucinate when they summarize things of tens of thousands of different comments. So like in Kentucky, in the US, Bowling Green, they use the same police technology, and then they use AI models to automatically generate the topic and the summary, so everybody can see at a glance what is the commonly agreed ideas. And if you implement those ideas, it can trace back to the original statement and tell these people, oh, your words made this change happen, closing the loop immediately.
Do you think what you're saying is close to the idea of Anno Takahiro-san, who ran for the Tokyo governor, and he's saying that broad listening is important. So he's using AI to facilitate all the opinions, because politicians say that they listen to everyone, but we are a physical human being, so we cannot listen to thousands of people in one day. But do you think AI can kind of sort and kind of facilitate or put the opinions into some readable, accessible information.
It's exactly the same idea. And it's not a coincidence because Ano-san read a book before he decided to run for governor.
Oh, so he read this book and ran for governor. Okay.
Yes. And we had a video conference before he announced his candidacy. And so he said that he also want to use Polis or a later extension to Polis called Talk to the City in his campaign. And I encouraged him to experiment.
So how can you convince the people who are minorities or the 49%? I'm interested in this same-sex marriage, what happened in Taiwan, and I covered it, and I noticed that some people are not, some people were against the law. And people are worried that some relatives, they will be forced to same-sex marriage.
Exactly, yes.
What happened in Taiwan?
Yes. So what happened in Taiwan was that initially it was a constitutional court ruling that the parliament need to, in the next 2 years, figure out some way. But the constitutional court didn't say exactly which way. And then some people tried to change the civil code and put it to the referendum, but it didn't work. So we need to go back to the drawing board. And using the same ideas of uncommon ground, we look at what both sides care about. It turns out in Mandarin in Taiwan, there's two distinct concepts. There's 结婚, which means two individuals wed as a couple, enjoying the rights and duties as other couples. There's 结姻, which means the kinship, the families linked together into a larger family. There are two distinct concepts. When we say 婚姻, we're linking the two concepts together. But actually, these two can be teased apart because the people who are pro same-sex wedding is more individualistic. And the people who are pro this family values, kinships, and so on, they actually don't hate the fact that the individuals enjoy some rights or duties. They just don't want to invent new kinship, like this is my daughter's wife or this is my son's husband, and so on, the family link. And so when we legalized the same-sex marriage, we only legalized the wedding part between individuals. And we did not legalize the kinship part. And so it's the best of both worlds. You won't be forced into becoming a relative, but the individuals still enjoy the same protection and duties. In a sense, this is a better form of marriage because, for example, supporting extended family, the duty is less and the conflict of interest is easier. And both sides are 18 years old. There's no problem of 16 years old, and so on. And so this is a more modern form of wedding, but it doesn't pull in the family. So after this uncommon ground is discovered, it depolarizes. So the both sides, they don't hate each other that much after the law passes.
That is a very interesting example. So this is plurality, collaboration between people who have differences. Does this happen because of technology, or is it like a kind of an art or a form of political communication?
I think this is fundamentally a thinking of democracy as a form of technology.
Interesting.
So just like semiconductor, every month there's some new design. And you see from 3 nanometer to 2 nanometer and so on. And so it upgrades with time. So just like other technology, democracy is a social technology that gets better the more people invent in it. So like Ano-san with broad listening, that is an innovation in the technology of listening. And the Polis conversation is an innovation in the visualization, showing people the different sides and their commonalities. You can apply many, many innovations to democracy itself. So I say this is not one particular technology, but rather thinking of democracy as technology.
Democracy as technology. So you're saying that technology is not an iPhone or quantum computing or artificial intelligence, but kind of a system. So you're saying that there will be democracy 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 without using, technology like iPhone
or democracy 3.0 beta or something.
So why is this happening? Is this because human beings are becoming smarter? Why is democracy updating?
I think this is because in Taiwan, for example, the first time we can vote for our president is in 1996.
Yes.
And that's already after the browser. the World Wide Web.
So democracy after the browser.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So when democracy happened in Taiwan, the lifting of the martial law that was in the 80s, already personal computing is there. So naturally, people think of democracy not as a fixed set of things, but rather many, many innovations, participatory budgeting, e-petitioning, sandboxes, presidential hackathon. All of these are democratic, but they participate in different ways. You can mix and match, just like you can mix and match Lego blocks. You can match those different democratic configurations in order to have more voice. That leads to better choice. And with better choice, it encourages more voice.
So 1996, even after Windows 95.
That's exactly right. Yes. So Windows 95 can be upgraded to 98 to new technology, Windows NT.
So you're saying that Taiwan is in a way an advantage because, unlike Western countries who have democracy for 120, 200 years, you are new, so you have new ideas.
Exactly, because it's not like we have some technologists that specialize in cutting-edge innovation, startup founders, and another people just specializing in understanding 200 years of Republican tradition or something. No, it's the same generation of people. Actually, the same people. The social entrepreneurs. They're also the entrepreneurs in innovation in how democracy works.
So you mentioned 1996. Let's fast forward to 2000, 2005, 2010. There was social media, and there was all movement around the world, Arab Spring, and I myself thought that this would change the world. It would change democracy, but in turn, it led to a mess or destruction of democracy. What is happening, and why is your idea different?
In 2015, a sea change happened to social media. Before that year, maybe 2010 or so, it's called microblogging, meaning that you write, but in short form. You follow each other, just like blogging, and you can curate a feed, just like other bloggers, and then you can publish the feed so people can subscribe to the same thing. That's very neutral. However, in 2015, many social media companies switched to the For You feed by default instead of the following feed. What's different? The following feed is a For Us feed. Everybody who follow the same people see the same thing. We're in the same reality. The For You feed is different. It is a parasitic AI. It's an AI that reads what keeps you engaged to the phone and kept you glued to the touch screen as an addict user of that feed. And so each person have a very different world compared to every other person. And the group dynamics, what you like, what you don't like, who you identify with, and so on, is hidden from you. It's never displayed to you. But if you're an advertiser and pay a lot of money, you can see those demographics, right? So what it does is that it strip mine the social fabric, just selling it to the highest bidder. And then because it's stripped down to only addiction as its only engagement through enragement metric. So people become addicted, but they have no idea why they are addicted. And because of that, it becomes harder and harder for people to find common ground. It becomes easier and easier for extreme content to get viral. So that's why it has such an impact to democracy, like an asteroid to dinosaurs.
Right. How can we change that?
So we can flip the algorithm around. So instead of hiding the group dynamics, like Polis, we can show the group dynamics. The Polis algorithm has influenced a small team within Twitter called Birdwatch. And after Elon Musk took over Twitter, renamed it X.com, the idea from Birdwatch became community nodes. And so today in X.com, everybody can sign up to become like a jury to the tweets. And once a post goes viral, everybody can write some notes. However, people can upvote and downvote, just like in Polis. So the left wing will upvote a different way. The right wing will downvote what left wing upvotes. But if some post from the community nodes get an upwing vote, an upvote from both wings, it floats to the top and becomes sticky. So that's how they do community nodes, using the Polis-like bridging algorithm. So that's a very good innovation. So now YouTube have adopted it also. And in the US, Meta, Facebook, and so on have also adopted this. And so what we're seeing is a shift from these vertical institutions of trust, like top journalists or academics or ministers. But then people trust more each other, like people who think like me, talk like me, and so on. And so I trust the crowd wisdom through community notes to show what is likely to be the consensus and what's not the consensus. Of course, that's still just a footnote. So the main feed is still antisocial.
True.
It's just the notes that are pro-social. So now there are new innovators, for example, the Blue Sky people. They are going back to the roots of pro-social media, allowing people to curate the feeds and share those feeds again. And then we're helping them to make such police-like algorithm the default for the Blue Sky feed.
So pro-social, I agree with the concept, and it's fair to say that Meta, Twitter, X has been trying hard. But still, at the end of the day, they need to make money because there is a private company. They have responsibility for shareholders and they have advertisers. Do you think that in the future or in the near future, we should have public funding, or maybe not the government, but maybe a public sector should run social media because it's such an important infrastructure for the freedom of speech?
When I was a child, if you go to a bank and have a ATM card, debit card, you can withdraw cash.
Yes.
But only from that bank's ATM. And so if you go to another bank's ATM, it doesn't give you any cash.
No.
But that's a very bad situation because if you set up a new bank, you cannot compete with old banks because all the good place for ATM is already taken. So the government stepped in, not to nationalize all banks, but just to say there must be an interbank protocol. You use the new bank's card on the old bank ATM. That should still give you cash, maybe with some transaction cost, but it needs to be universal, interbank protocol. Or for example, if you switch from your telecom, your mobile carrier, to another carrier, the government steps in and say, the old number you have must be portable to the new telecom.
I see.
The old telecom must forward all the call to the old number into the new telecom. Because again, if you have to change your number, then new telecom become almost impossible to compete with old telecom because of network effect. Now consider today, if you switch from TikTok, say, to Blue Sky, all your connections are lost, or your content is lost.
And your followers
are lost. If you have a lot, like million followers, you go to Blue Sky, you start from zero.
I don't want to do that.
Which is why not many people make the switch.
There's such a high switching cost.
Exactly. And so because of that, the larger platform that are existing player can get away by squeezing their customer, not delivering better service, but because they know competitors cannot replicate the network effect easily. So now in the state of Utah, in the US, they pass a law called the Digital Choice Act. Starting next year, in 2026, people in Utah, when they switch from, say, TikTok to, say, Blue Sky, TikTok must, by law, provide the same kind of social graph, follower, and the content feed to the new network as if they are still on the old network.
I see.
So you can keep your follower. The replies still work both ways. And this benefits everyone that's not the top player. And so that law is already passed in Utah. I think as more jurisdictions look at this interoperability, portability law, they don't need to nationalize all social media, but they can make it more like utilities so that they have to compete on quality instead of on network effect.
I like to challenge that because you're saying kind of like a digital identity or digital passport, but who will assure that authorization? Because if I have a passport, the government of Japan assures that this is true. If I have a banknote, which is Japanese yen, 1,000 yen, Bank of Japan assures this is true. If you have a digital identity or digital passport, who will assure that or authorize? Is it, again, a government, which is a centralization?
So in Taiwan, we have already rolled out the Digital Identity Wallet, or the DIW. In the wallet, anyone can assure that this is true. So your university can give you a diploma as a credential, and they attest that you have graduated. Or your employer can say, oh, you're really an employee. Or the Ministry of Transportation can say you really passed the driver's license exam. So anyone can certify anyone else.
I see.
It's entirely open. However, when you prove that you, for example, are 18 years old, you do not need to reveal anything else. So for example, I can say, oh, this diploma proves I'm over 18 because it's a college degree or something. But I don't have to reveal which year I graduate or my birthday or my name. So in the cases where all it needs is just your age signal, you do not need to reveal your full identity.
I see.
This is important for democracy because if every sentence, every statement need to be signed by the real name, then people are afraid of doxing.
Right.
Re-identification, the reputational damage. But if you don't prove anything, true anonymity, then anyone can fake 10,000 accounts and use AI robots
Right.
to simulate grassroots support. But there's no grassroots support. It's just robots, right? So you cannot do pure anonymity, but you don't want to do real ID. So in the middle, it's called meronymity, partial name disclosure, selective disclosure, and that is the place we're going. It's not the big state, the big tech, surveillance, but it's also not total chaos.
I ask you this because 2 points. One is that in Japan, there's a public opinion system, but there are fake accounts sending fake messages, pretend to be citizens. And number two, I'm afraid of authoritarian states. What's happening in authoritarian states? It can lead to surveillance. So you're saying that you can overcome that.
Yes. The digital agency here just published a report comparing the decentralized digital identity wallets. Taiwan is part of it, but also California, the EU, Australia, many places are testing out this idea of decentralized identity.
Great. So let's talk about our second card, new consensus. So we talked about digital democracy, digital wallet, and it totally makes sense. But what's the balance between consensus and speed? Because if there's a war or a very emergency or like COVID, we need speed. We don't have time for consensus. A lot of our viewers are in the business sector, and some people are CEOs, managers, and they understand that when we want to make decisions, we can't just listen to every employee. So what's the right balance between consensus and speed?
Well, I mean, if you listen to your employee sequentially, then of course it's going to be very slow.
How to do that? Yes.
But if you listen to them simultaneously, then it's as fast as any focus group. In Taiwan, last March, we found a big problem on social media. Facebook, YouTube, a lot of advertisements that are fake. Many of them come from Jensen Huang, but not really him. Someone who looks like him, an AI. And this fake Jensen Huang of NVIDIA want to give you some free cryptocurrency or financial advice or some free stock. And if you click it, the fake Jensen Huang talk to you very convincingly. It's his voice.
With his jacket on?
Yeah, with his jacket. Yes. The early version are very bad. You can see 7 fingers or something. But very quickly, they become very good. So people get scammed out of millions of dollars. However, earlier, a few years ago, when our government tried to regulate that, people say, no, we don't want government to censor freedom of expression. What if the government used this as a way to censor political speech? So they don't want government to assume that much power. But the deepfake, a real problem. So what to do? So again, this is a case where you want to simultaneously listen to people, but it's very urgent. So we sent 200,000 text messages, SMS, to random numbers around Taiwan simultaneously. It comes from 111, the government number, so people know it's not a scam. We only ask, how do you feel about deepfake ads and what to do? And so people give us ideas. And thousands of people volunteered to an online citizen assembly. We chose 450 people randomly, representing the same statistical representation of gender, occupation, place they live, age bracket, a microcosm of Taiwan, so like mini public. And then simultaneously, in 45 rooms of 10 people each, they deliberate, they talk to one another. And so not sequentially, in parallel, they have such conversation.
I see.
And then we use AI to summarize the best idea.
And curate the idea.
Exactly. For example, one room say, you should not default as true until somebody flag is scam. You should default as scam until Jensen Huang actually signs off that message. Very good idea. Another room say, you shouldn't fine Facebook. You shouldn't punish them through fine. You should say they're liable. If it's a scam advertisement not signed, somebody gets scammed for $10 million. Facebook should pay $10 million. That's how they would comply. Another room says, ByteDance, TikTok, they don't have a Taiwan office. They can ignore us. What to do? They say, you should slow down connection to their server. Their video should load slower and slower until all their advertisement budget, the advertisement revenue goes to Google. And so all these ideas are compatible with one another, but no human facilitator can absorb them immediately. So we use language model, AI.
I see.
And then it's woven together, read back. Oh, people supported these measures. That was last March. By April, we check with all the big tech. By May, a draft legislation is made. By July, it's all passed. So this year, you scroll in Taiwan, you don't see any fake ads anymore in YouTube or Facebook. And so, again, parallel listening, broad listening doesn't need to be slow. It's very, very quick.
And this can happen because of technology.
Of course. Without AI, if you get 45 rooms, each with one facilitator, after deliberation, those 45 facilitators go together. It will take a long time for them to piece together all the compatibilities. They cannot just merge their brain together. But a language model can do that.
That's an interesting point because even Jensen Huang can not do one-on-one with 1,000 people. He cannot listen simultaneously. And there's also a number called the numbers number, which means that people can only remember faces of, like, let's say 150 people.
Exactly. So 450 is too much.
Too much.
Yeah, you need GPU, maybe from NVIDIA, to help you.
So do you think that democracy was kind of like a fiction? Because when you read Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he was supposed to think of democracy as a people of like maybe 30, 100 people, not millions of people. Because do you think democracy was a fiction and now we can have
You can make it non-fiction.
Non-fiction.
Yes, moving from the fiction to the non-fiction.
So democracy, non-fiction, that's an interesting concept.
Yes, and I think democracy was designed when the polities were small. In Athens, the polities are not very large.
Very, very like hundreds or thousands of people.
And when they grow larger, they also use lottery. Sortition.
Right.
Exactly the same way as I just described, to choose a smaller number so it's more manageable. So the idea of mini public is not new. It comes from the technology. And they also use random number generator, like a stone tool or something, back in the ancient Greece. So now we're upgrading democracy from that kind of stone tool to silicon tool, but still the same idea of making democracy more than a fiction.
So AI kind of aggregating all the information, how can we trust AI? Because we have now like Smart News, or in Yahoo Japan kind of curates the content and kind of sorts the content, millions of comments into a few comments. And I agree that we can use technology to curate the contents and opinions, but how can we check and see if the AI is doing a good job?
Well, I mean, like in Bowling Green, Kentucky, they allow people to download the entire data set.
Got it.
Of course, no real name, but the upvote, the downvote, the whole matrix. And then the tool they use to summarize, Polis, and also the Jigsaw SenseMaker are also open source, which means you can run locally on your computer. And you can also point it to an open source model like Gemma that runs on your phone or your computer. And then you can use like MRI, like mechanistic interpretability tools. So you can look at the model as it does the thinking, making sure that it doesn't hallucinate. It's very difficult if the model is not open. If it runs on somebody else's data center, then you cannot use the same transparency tools to ensure its auditability. So making sure that the Polis sense-making works with smaller models running locally, that is very important. Because otherwise, it's like the mainframe computing of the old era. You have to submit all the punch card, and you have to believe that the mainframe operator does a good job. But with personal computer, you don't have to trust any system operator. You are the system operator. So the open source models with auditability, interpretability tool, that is the most important.
Right. So we can have a broad listening system and we can build a consensus. At the same time, so there are people who have no access to technology. In Japan, it's an aging society, so people maybe they cannot use smartphones. And one more other thing, that sometimes we like private conversations.
Of course.
So we're being filmed right now. This is on YouTube. But maybe
We're being filmed.
we're filmed. Did you know that?
idea.
But maybe I want to have a private conversation with Audrey. So what do you think about that?
Okay, well, we can exchange signal.
Or line or something. Okay.
Okay. But the point here is that the public conversation do not need to be entirely re-identifiable. That is the main insight. The consensus coming from the room of 10 people comes as a consensus of that room. So even if I am the person in the 10 people room that come up with this brilliant idea that everybody agrees with, still that is presented as room one's idea. So there's less risk of it being taken out of context and doxing me and so on and so forth. So it is not just two people personal conversation or a broadcasting conversation. You can have small group conversations like with your friends and family, and at the end of the day, it preserves the context, but what's resonating gets transmitted as kind of consensus from that room. And so you do not suffer from the privacy breaches, but you can still get useful signal across.
So you don't get, you don't have to have a responsibility for saying this, or it's like Chatham House rule.
Exactly. You can say, I learned from this group, but you cannot say, I learned from whom.
How can we keep the privacy? Because it's a digital age, so people can track down. You know, we have now social media, so we can track down to like even comments you made 5 or 10 years ago, people realize. How can we respect the privacy, block us from everything being spread out?
Yeah. I think one of the main technologies for this is, as I mentioned, the selective disclosure. So you can prove that you are a resident or you're over 18, but using cryptography, you can also prove that this is otherwise zero knowledge, meaning that the verifier of the proof cannot learn anything else about you. So this is not the case where they collect all your information, like from your ID, and promise to you they will not tell others, because they can break that promise. Or even if they don't break the promise, some criminal can hack into the system and break the promise for them, right? So how about in the very beginning, do not collect the information at all. But
so completely private conversation.
Completely private conversation. But then you still present the credential to show you're not a robot.
Interesting.
So that's called zero knowledge proof.
The talk show we did 1 or 2 days ago, you mentioned about physics protecting us. Could you elaborate on that? That the law of physics will protect us protect our privacy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the physical world, if you are here talking to me, you're not somewhere else talking to somebody else.
No.
And if I want to say that I am here and you can see that I am here and there's witness to say I'm here, then I can also prove that I'm not somewhere else. And so the laws of physics say that a single person cannot be in many places at the same time. However, in the digital world, that's not the case. I can have many avatars.
Right.
I can train AI robotics. I can have digital twin that speaks on my behalf in many, many different places. But then it breaks a fundamental promise, because then you don't know whether you're talking to me or you're just talking to a recorder that goes and broadcasts everything.
This
to
is not
everybody.
a recorder, right?
Right.
Okay.
This is not, right?
It's a physical, real Audrey Tang. You can touch me.
Yes. Yes. And so we're protected by the law of physics. As we shake hands, we can know that this is a real person. This is not some robotic AI double. But if we're doing a video conference, it's not possible. You can see a likeness of Audrey Tang.
But we cannot shake hands.
You cannot shake hands. And you actually have no idea whether it's me or a AI synthetic avatar or somebody else wearing my likeness and using my voice. Impossible to tell now, right? And so that is why the physics law protects us when we say, oh, this is an integrity situation where there's only 2 people in the room, versus the online situation where you don't know whether it's just 1 person in the room, the other is a robot, or there's actually 1,000 people in the room, the other one is a synthetic avatar coming from 1,000 people. You never know.
So what's the importance of 2 people meeting each other physically? Because you can have an AR or avatar coming to the studio and he or she will memorize all this and just answer the questions. But you came all the way from Taiwan to Tokyo to Akasaka TV station using your time and your effort and cost. What's the meaning of us talking physically?
Well, the meaning is that we become friends.
Okay.
It's called the civic muscle. It rebuilds trust in the society because we know, although we have differences, we also have common values. Whereas, if I only talk to my avatar and you talk to your avatar, we send the chatbots to have a conversation and they agree on a lot of things. And then they go back to brainwash, persuade us into accepting. It's very impressive. It's like, sending your robot to the gym to lift the weights. They can lift much more weight than you can. I can send my robot to run treadmill much faster than I can.
Okay.
What's the point, though? There's no muscle to be grown this way. Because democracy, at the end of the day, is about demos. It's about everyday people. And the idea of polity relies on the link between people. So if we all send our avatar to do deliberation and avatar state, okay, they may trust each other very much, but we lose trust altogether. That's leaving everybody behind. That's a dystopia.
This is an interesting point because when I read plurality, it seemed that, broad listening, avatars, so it seemed to me that we'll start speaking to each other with avatars. But you're saying that this is one part of plurality, but also this human being interactive physical communication is also important.
Exactly. So I always say AI is assistive intelligence. So, for example, if you don't speak English and I don't speak Nihongo, we can each have an AI, like a babel fish, that translates, interprets simultaneously. So, of course, that's a good use of AI because it crosses cultural barriers and linguistic barriers. But that AI does not make us go apart. It actually draws us closer. It's like wearing an eyeglass. It's not to replace my eyes. It's to make sure that I see you more clearly. And so if AI is used assistively, then it strengthens the civic muscle. But if AI is used in such a way so that people don't talk to people anymore, don't listen to other people anymore, then it makes the muscle atrophy. And that is very bad for democracy.
So we still need human interactions, even in the age of AI.
Yeah, so in the age of AI, the AI can handle the task that is between two machines. Too many parts of our job is just to take output from one machine, process it somehow, and feed it to another machine. These issues can be automated by robots. Humans just supervise. But if it's between two humans, between a group of humans, listening to each other, building civic muscle, well, it frees our time to take care of each other.
Interesting. So finally, let's talk about Japan. So first of all, why are you in Japan this time? So instead of just doing this interview, what's the purpose of your visit?
So I was invited to attend the Sushi Tech, which is a food conference that also have AI and quantum.
No, it's a tech conference, by the way.
It also have food tech.
Okay.
So it's an AI, quantum, and food conference, which is very special. And so I like the idea of sustainable high tech because to many people, tech is very much about hype, about the speculations that may never be fulfilled. So it's almost like lying to your investors, to the general public. But sometimes it survives the disillusionment and it goes to somewhere that's productive. However, in Sushi Tech, we learned that many people in Japan, they can just quantum tunnel through the initial hype, through open innovation, through an ecosystem of startups that support each other. They don't need to do a lot of hype. They can go straight to product market fit. And I think that is because people here, when they invest, they also want to invest in the common good, like collaborative capitalism. If something is only good for one company, but very bad for the rest of the society, the investor here do not invest in such ideas. And so I would say they're also more pro-social. And so I would like to support this kind of sustainable innovation, which is why I am in Sushi Tech in Tokyo.
So do you think that Japanese people are, generally speaking, positive towards technology?
I think Japanese people have much more example of AI coexisting with the everyday life. For example, I was just at the Takanawa Gateway City, and they have this robotic platform that moves by itself. You can hop on it, you can hop down, and if you feel it's moving too quickly, you can press to tell it to slow down. It's all very much in the speed of like walking, walking fast, walking slow, and so on. So you don't feel that this is a AI car that moves fast and breaks things. No, it doesn't break anything. It is very steerable. If you want it to be slow, you can slow it down. If you want to walk with it, you can walk with it. So this kind of co-domestication, treating AI as part of everyday life, but not something that destroys society.
Interesting.
Disruptive innovation. No, I think collaborative innovation much better than disruptive innovation.
Do you think this is because of our culture, science fiction? What's your hypothesis?
You mean like we grow up reading Doraemon, and not Terminator?
Not Terminator, because we're friends with Doraemon.
Right, exactly, yeah. And also, Doraemon offers you a lot of tools, but they're all opting in. And if Nobita, that doesn't like the result of such tool, he always opt out at the end. So you can keep the part of the tool that works better with the society, but you can also say no to the tool that did not work well. So you don't see all the children in Doraemon just swiping TikTok, one episode after one another. That would be very boring.
I'm a big fan of Doraemon, so I don't want to be critical, but when I read Doraemon, Nobita is like a regular human being boy. He always rely on Doraemon, and he's a kind of a lazy boy. So if we have AI, we're worried that we won't do anything, we'll be lazy.
Yeah, I mean, part of the message of Doraemon is that the civic muscle, the friendship between the children, the mutual care, that is the real target. That is why people grow up and understanding each other. That is the point. The point is not that they must do some useful work. If they want to play the rope between fingers or something all day,
Ayatori.
yes, they're free to do that. So because it's a creative endeavor, and people think that this kind of endeavor brings people together. So I think, again, the civic muscle is the main output. And it is not about turning people into robots. That's not the message.
So you made an interesting point about Taiwan. The democracy started from 1996, and also there was a sunflower movement in 2014. Also, Japan is not, compared to the West, we were slow to adapting democracy. Do you think that's kind of advantage in Japan, similar to Taiwan?
Definitely. I think in Japan, many people think of democracy as maybe not just politics, not just national politics. Many people think of democracy also as local citizen assembly, local participation, future councils. And there's actually more Japanese small cities, towns, running alignment assemblies of the city level compared to other countries. Right? So that is the grassroots form of participatory democracy. And so unlike in the West, where people, once they're disenfranchised about partisan politics, they have nowhere else to go. In Japan, there's many civic associations that they can still practice grassroots participatory democracy. And so I think broad listening and the plurality tools is not a top-down thing that happened to Japan. It is more like looking at what already exists in Japan and uplifting it so that it enters national consciousness.
So it's interesting that democracy is actually updating in like Taiwan, Japan, in East Asia. So this is a very interesting fact because, democracy started from the West. And some people argue that it's not a universal thing, it's just a concept of the West. Do you think it's a very universal thing? And this is a time that East Asian, Taiwan and Japan is the time to update democracy.
Yeah, of course. I mean, many of Japan's most well-known innovations, like Kaizen and so on, did not start in Japan. They were imported ideas.
Right.
But once they land in Japan, Japan make it industrial scale and very famous.
Okay.
Right. So it doesn't matter where, like in Athens or Greece, did the idea come from. We can make it industrial scale.
So let's talk about plurality again. So plural, I agree, the concept, but in the world of President Donald Trump, the world is super polarized. So there's no, people are tearing apart, it's divided. And Ken Suzuki-san, who written piece for this book. He wrote a book called 滑らかな社会とその敵. Oh, you know that. By the way, how do you translate 滑らか into English? Do you know?
Smooth.
Smooth. Okay, so
like a smoothie.
so he argued that there will be no borders and there will be 滑らか. But do you think it's happening right now, or do you think the world is turning into a different direction? Too polarized, too block economy. How are you witnessing this world right now?
I think we are seeing a transition from the vertical mode of trust, where a few people, like the top academics, top journalists, top ministers, they know everything, the elites, they rule the world, and everyday people who just live in the world that they make. So that was like the 1 and 0. There's no in between. But we are moving to a smooth society where many people now do not trust those vertical institutions as much. I mean, even in Japan, where the vertical journalism are still very much trusted, very legitimate. Still, more and more younger people go to the horizontal mode of media, the social networks, and they take much more content, much more video, from the people who think like them, speak like them, the influencers, who may or may not have the same journalistic training, but at least they sound like them, right? So that's a horizontal mode of trust. So that is going more smoothly. The problem is, in many places around the world, the horizontal mode prioritizes the extreme. So it's just the extreme left, extreme right, that has all the influences. And the uncommon ground is forgotten. And so we need to change that model. I'm not arguing that we go back just to the vertical institutions. There's no going back. But we can make sure that in the horizontal mode, the common ground that is created by plurality gains virality, gains visibility. Because after all, the extreme content being amplified is just an artifact of the individual precision targeting advertisement model. If you switch to a common sense, common experience advertisement, or you switch to a subscription-based model, then there's no reason why the extreme must be amplified. So I'm cautiously optimistic we can switch from antisocial horizontal media into a pro-social horizontal media.
And do we need like a new business model or new CEO, new technology or new something, or can we make it happen right this moment?
Yes, I think in Utah, they already passed the Digital Choice Act. So even if you are a Caesar, a king of the social media, you cannot prevent your challenger from happening. So just like Jay Graber, who famously wore in South by Southwest this shirt that says, imagine a world without Caesar. So it's not to move fast and break things. It's to move fast and break kings. To make sure that the newcomers, startups, competitors do not suffer from the lock-in of the old tech titan, but rather they can compete on equal terms.
I'm just curious, what do you think about AI? Do you think singularity is near? What's your opinion about ChatGPT and all things AI?
Well, in my job description in 2016, I say, whenever we hear the singularity is near, let's always remember the plurality is here. So it means...
You're a poet.
Yes, I'm a poetician. So many people in Silicon Valley think of AI as taking off, super intelligence, a new AI that makes a better AI with minimal human input. That AI make an even better AI with even less human input. Until such a day, it make the next generation with no human input. It's called takeoff. But the problem is that then it leaves humanity with just two choices. You either think that's the best scenario, utopia, so you need to accelerate. Or you think that's going to be doom, dystopia, so you must stop and pause. So it's like a car with just a pedal or the brake, and they fight with each other. However, a car is nothing without a steering wheel. So to me, plurality is that steering wheel. Instead of super intelligence that leaves everybody behind, we need to make sure it's augmented, assistive intelligence that leaves no one behind. Instead of a super intelligent AI that computes on its own, we need to make sure it's organically, collectively aligned with everyday people, with society in the loop, in a way that's decentralized, democratic, and defensive, as in not dual use. And that's the direction of plurality.
I think you should talk to Sam Altman or Elon Musk. They should listen to you.
I think many people in Silicon Valley already are embracing this idea of plurality. Recently, there's a paper called AI as Normal Technology that argues this point. And already, say, Vitalik Buterin called this the D/X, the idea of differential acceleration. We shouldn't accelerate the takeoff, the dangerous offensive use. We should accelerate the defensive, the resilient use. So many different words like DAG and so on. But plurality, I think, is more interesting because it says two things. It says it's no singularity. And also it says it's pluralism. It includes everybody, not exclude anyone.
So last final question, I will use a joke, or maybe I'll play the devil's advocate. I listened to your talk today, I read this book. So why are you so optimistic? Because we live in very hard times. There's war, there's misuse of technology, misinformation. Why are you so optimistic?
I'm optimistic because I have seen the low level of trust, 9% in 2014 in Taiwan, with the help of bridging system and pro-social media, regain the trust. By 2020, the trust level, approval rating, more than 70%. And so I have lived through this transformation of very low trust, very high polarization, to very high trust and very low polarization.
That is very inspiring. Thank you, Audrey Tang, for joining our show.
Thank you for the great questions. Live long and prosper.